morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this discussion. Tonight, I'd like to pick up where we left off yesterday on the issue of good governance. Zimbabwe is a failed state. And the main reason for it is that we have failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. And so we found ourselves stuck with a corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical dictatorship. That is at the heart of our problem. I'm showing there a map of Africa. And the title for it is Democracy Index. The score mark is no different from what we showed the other day when we talked about Sadc. Zimbabwe, as you can see there, is the democracy index is 2.92. And compare that to Botswana, which is 7.73, South Africa 7.05, and so forth. And those countries where there is a significant level of democracy, they've done well. Zimbabwe in 1980, economically, we were an upper middle income country. Today, we are one of the poorest countries in the world. Countries that were way behind us, like Botswana, are doing a lot better than us. Botswana is an upper middle income country today, and so is South Africa. And not surprisingly, of course, this is why so many Zimbabweans are going to South Africa or Botswana to escape the abject poverty in Zimbabwe. Tonight, I would like to focus specifically on the issue of the purpose of the opposition. By the late 1990s, the people of Zimbabwe realized that ZANU-PF was a dictatorship. The regime had corrupted the various state institutions so that there were no free, fair, and credible elections. The primary purpose of the opposition ever since the late 1990s was that they would implement democratic changes to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. This is why MDC is called the Movement for Democratic Change. They promised that if they got into power, they would implement democratic changes to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. But as we know, they've not done anything. This is why last year, in the 2023 elections, ZANU-PF once again blatantly rigged the elections. So the focus has been on the opposition. And some of the people who brought up this issue are people like Ibbo Mandaza, who have put on the pressure on the likes of Nelson Chamisa that they failed the people of Zimbabwe. This debate has carried on. Welcome to you, Benjamin. You have been following the social media. What do you think of the pressure that is being put on Nelson Chamisa?
Good day to all our viewers. Yeah, I have been following. Actually, I was actually, in a debate earlier with a few friends of mine that actually still believe Zimbabwe needs, leadership that should, that can take the country forward. And I'm of the opinion, I don't know, maybe people may differ with this. I believe, the source of our problem in Zimbabwe is the toxic political environment. Now, let's picture this. Whoever is going to become president in the current system, as things stand, will never reform the system, because basically you're taking away all the presidential powers away from yourself, leaving yourself vulnerable, you know, leaving yourself, you know, accountable. Because as things stand, you're not accountable to anybody in this environment. You do as you please. Statutory instrument, if people do not want to listen to you, you know, you can bulldoze everything, you appoint everybody basically. So who would want to remove those powers from themselves when they're actually president? I mean, we are human. Let us be honest. Most of us will not want to do that. So the best time to, to, to reform, or the best time to cleanse the environment, the political environment, is before somebody takes power, before somebody becomes president. And here we were, we have been speaking in this here platform, for quite some time about reforms. And it seems, you know, very few people actually see what how important they are, you know. And as you mentioned earlier, the main purpose of the movement for democratic change, and as the name suggests, the movement for democratic change, this is to aspire to change the current toxic environment in Zimbabwe, to push it towards the democracy, meaningful say for everybody, in terms of your vote, in terms of transparency, in terms of accountability for those that are in that hold public office. This is what the MDC was meant to do. They didn't even have the idea, or the the foresight that they would be actually wanting to be running for presidents. It was never meant to be that. That came as a secondary thought, when they realized, we've got people that are backing us up. I can actually be president. This is what Morgan Tsvangirai thought. I can actually be president. And from there, once that rot set in, they forgot everything about their name suggests, democracy. How the change from this toxic environment into a democratic society. They forgot about it. They started dealing with you know with the president. How do we win elections? How do we win elections? That became the main goal, and they tossed away that the democracy part. And unfortunately, sadly, Morgan Tsvangirai passed away, and Chamisa and other candidates came forward. None of them have ever talked about reforms. It's, I'm going to win big. This time we are going to do this. Monzora, when he was, when he didn't even have any support, he also wanted to win big. They have all since forgotten about their mandate, what they formed this organization to do. It has now become, how do I become president at all cost, keeping the environment as toxic as it is. This is where we are.
I think the um, debate that has been going on this last few weeks has been useful in the sense that it, for the first time, focused on the opposition's performance. The opposition, the MDC, were elected since the formation of the party in 1999 into office for the purpose of implementing the democratic reforms to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. Their best chance came during the 2008 to 2013 GNU. What is really disappointing is that most Zimbabweans failed to realize that the GNU, the primary purpose of the GNU was to implement the democratic reforms. It's not surprising, of course, that they failed to realize it because most Zimbabweans out there, some of them even to this day, don't even know what the reforms are, let alone how they are implemented. And so MDC got away with it. Mugabe bribed them with the trappings of high office, and they forgot about the reforms. And this last few weeks, this debate that was started by the likes of Ibbo Mandaza, who is in the cartoon there, saying to Chamisa he should forget about his cowardice in it and leave opposition politics because he's not an effective leader, have really focused the spotlight on the opposition and their performance. This spotlight should have been on the opposition soon after the GNU, because they had failed to implement even one token reform. And that was the best opportunity the country ever had. But as people say, it's better late than never. One can only hope that the people of Zimbabwe are really having the wake-up call. They're beginning now to really seriously look at how the opposition have been performing. And it is important that they do that. Because as long as we've got an opposition that is supposed to implement reforms to stop ZANU-PF rigging elections, and they're not doing it, and we keep participating in flawed elections to give the regime legitimacy, this madness will continue. And I'm hoping that this debate is not going to be dropped easily. It's going to look at now with greater scrutiny and greater attention at how the opposition has been performing. The idea that Nelson Chamisa should step aside is not going to solve the problem, because if Nelson Chamisa can take advantage of the people by telling them a blatant lie, idiotic lie, like I've plugged all the vote rigging loopholes, and they believe him, anyone else can tell them the same idiotic lie. This is why it is important that the people, their education should be put at the forefront now, and that they are learning something, that they've been gullible to believe the opposition and follow them blindly. That to me is what we should be emphasizing, putting a lot of emphasis on to take the nation forward.
I agree with you. Zimbabwe has never been short of candidates for vying for the presidency. I mean, we have noticed that, in our past elections, a lot of, people are bringing forward their names, their candidatures to give it a run. So that department, I think Zimbabwe has got a lot of people. Our biggest problem is the rot within the system. Zimbabwe is not a democratic country, period. We cannot, downplay that. It is not a democratic country. And then to focus my attention on the opposition, I think the opposition have done absolutely nothing. You know, unless maybe just fooling the people to give them that, you know, hope to say, you know, next time maybe, you know, since we got 44 this time, maybe next time we'll get towards 50. That is all that they have been doing. And obviously, you know, the parliamentary seats, the councillors, and all that, they have forgotten everything about their mandate. And as for hashtag God is in it, you know, I believe because the people are anxious, people are distraught, people, you know, people need something, you know, some form of hope. And where is the best place to find hope? It is to aid God. I mean, this is evident with the amount of even the churches that are there in Zimbabwe, the prophets that are there in Zimbabwe, and they're never short of people. So once somebody, you know, mentions God, people believe in that, even though whatever he is saying is nonsense. And I believe by just, you know, you took some, you took advantage of, you know, of desperate people that needed change, and you led them through an election process, knowing fully well that this process is rigged, and ZANU-PF will definitely rig and win it. But you know, you promised the people that don't worry, it it will be okay. And after you have taken them through that, you do not even give a reasonable explanation to what failed. All you just do now is give Bible verses. I'm sorry, but you know, I'm a Christian, but that just doesn't cut it. I mean, we need answers. Why did you do this? You know, what went wrong? Admission, right? And the way forward, you put us through this. How do you intend to get us out of it? So I agree, you know, with everybody that is asking the questions. I think it is about time where we start asking the questions to the opposition. Let's forget about ZANU-PF. ZANU-PF is, you know, is just ZANU-PF. It's a mess. That's a mess we're trying to get rid of. Mainly, you know, we need accountability from the opposition. Since you came in, what have you done in terms of bringing about democratic change? And for me, I would say absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing.
I would like to leave the listeners with an interview that Chamisa had with BBC Hard Talk. I think as a people, we need, like I said, people must be educated, knowledgeable, and diligent enough to hold those in positions of power and authority to account. What the BBC reporter was doing here is exactly what the electorate should do with the leaders. Hold them to account.
Ende patakasangana naTrump akatibvunza kuti nawe akomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Serious questions were raised about your behaviour in Washington, D.C. You did see some senior people on Capitol Hill, some Congress people, but you also claimed that you'd seen Donald Trump. You claimed you had a conversation with him in which you said he asked you how much you needed to move the country forward. You told him $15 billion, and he said to you that he would provide the money if you won the election. That was not true, was it?
Sangana naTrump akatibvunza kuti nawe akomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
It was not true that you'd seen Donald Trump and that Donald Trump indicated to you that he would provide, if you won the election,
But
$15 billion.
All those statements were said by other people, not what I said.
Akasangana na Trump akatibvunza nawakomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Well, no, because there is a video which shows you at a rally in January back home in Zimbabwe saying that Donald Trump had pretty much promised you $15 billion. To be clear, because some people in Zimbabwe are still confused, you're now telling me you did not meet Donald Trump.
We did not.
My last word would be, Chamisa blatantly lied about plugging all the vote rigging loopholes in last year's elections. The people of Zimbabwe must hold him to account for that. That was a blatant lie. And he conned 2 million Zimbabweans to participate in those elections, giving the process legitimacy. That is a serious problem. Why people failed to hold him to account beggars belief. As long as we have got an electorate that is so naive, so gullible, that they believe a blatant lie like that, and then when it turns out that it is not true, that it was a lie, they still fail to have the courage to hold those to account, responsible for the lie to account. That to me is why Zimbabwe is a failed state. We need an electorate that is not so easily conned, because if we are going to have an election in 2028 and 2 million are conned, be it by Trangirai, by Chamisa or somebody else, it doesn't really matter. But if they are so gullible, they can easily be conned. We can see ourselves in a situation where we have a repeat of what happened last year. That is the biggest challenge that we face in Zimbabwe today. So this debate, holding Chamisa and his fellow Triple C leaders to account, must continue. And people must take the initiative to hold them to account. That is my last message to the people tonight.
Yeah. In closing, I would want to say Zimbabwe is not short of presidential candidates. That is the secondary issue. You know, right now there's all talk about this whole Sadc thing. It's just a post. It doesn't even matter. You know, ZANU-PF is a group of underachievers. They will sing, you know, over a mud oven, if you remember. They will sing over commissioning a public toilet. So forget about that. Our problem and our big problem will still remain that Zimbabwe is a toxic political environment that needs deep, deep cleansing. And the only way, and I will agree with you, the only way we can do that is by us uniting as a people and taking time to learn what needs to be done for us to experience democracy, to experience like what other countries are experiencing. I'll give you a few countries that, you know, there is democracy. You know, you can even research for yourself to find out, you know, what needs to be done. There is no excuse that we should not know what consists of, you know, or what makes up democracy, or what are the prerequisites of democracy. We have the internet now, we have technology. All it just needs is time for us to learn and teach a friend. And I believe if we do that, we will have taken the most, you know, a giant leap forward, not a step, a leap forward Because democracy, one of the prerequisites is that us, the citizens, know what constitutes free, fair, and credible elections and our rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those who were able to join us. And thank you very much, Benjamin, and to everybody. Have a good night.